Delighted you could join us today. You'll see I'm working from home today for lots of reasons I won't bore you with, but just a little funny story on my last call. My cat brought a mouse in while I was on the call. And it was a really noisy mouse. It was squeaking around my feet, and I was trying to style it out, and I didn't do a very good job of it. When my husband came in, he said, "That's not a mouse, that's a rat." So I have had a rat in my kitchen today. Hopefully that won't happen now. Um, as is always the way with our webinars, we always love to hear whereabouts you're dialing in from. So do pop a note in the chat to let us know what part of the world you're dialing in from today. It's always good to hear where people are dialing in from. It's really interesting how we get sort of a real spread on some webinars. Other webinars, it's more UK based. So obviously Tarek's dialing in today from Florida, aren't you, Tarek?
I am the Sunshine State, Florida.
Yes, we could do with a bit of that over here right now. Actually, the sun is shining, but it's not very warm in the UK today, so at least not by the sea. So someone from Epic. Oh, Prague. So we've got Essex, Prague. It's quite a difference. London, Bedfordshire. Obviously, Kate is from Worthing. Oh, Worcestershire. I know Worcestershire very well, Kate. That's where I grew up. A little place called Clibry Mortimer, if you've ever heard of it, and most people haven't. Let me know. Worcester was like kind of my nearest decent sized sort of town city to go out to when I was a teenager. So yeah, when you tell people you're from Worcestershire, Shropshire, people sort of always say, "Where's that?" And you have to explain where it is, even from the UK. So um, right, we've got a few people joining, so I'll get started there because I'm just keen to make sure we just at the road. Kate, you have to let me know where you're from. It's interesting, Tarek. I'm from a place called. You'll see on the chat, it's spelt Cleobury, but if you're from the area, it's pronounced Clibbury. So yeah, it's a little tiny
That's how
village.
the locals say it.
It's how
It's a
the
local
locals say it.
giveaway.
It's very much a local town for local people. It's like the town that is sort of yeah, it's like going back in time. It's lovely, but it's yeah, quite old fashioned, but very nice, very rural. Okie dokes, let's get started. So, my name's Emma Bridger, and I'm one of the founders of the EX Space and People Lab. We aren't joined by my co-founder today, Lee, because he is doing other things. So he sent his apologies, but I'm joined by Katie, who's my EX Space colleague. And we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Tarek today from Cerkl and Broadcast. She'll tell us all about the products in a bit. So really excited to have Tarek on the webinar today to share his wisdom with us. So Tarek and I met, I think it was like earlier this year, Tarek, wasn't it?
February, I think February. I was in
Yeah,
Malaga, Spain at the
yes,
time.
yes, you were doing your kind of like Spanish road trip, weren't you?
Yes,
And it's always wonderful in our line of work when you meet someone that's just, you just like-minded, you're just like, yes, yes, yes. And it's just we had a real sort of inspiring first conversation and really aligned in our thinking and views, although some good challenges as well, which is always great. It's not just kind of echo chamber with us, Tarek. It's always kind of, oh, hang on a minute, it's more some good challenges in there. But I was really excited when we met because we have a lot of the same views on the way that the internal comms and people profession is going, that we have a really exciting opportunity with AI, which you're going to talk about, in that it can now do a lot of what we kind of only dreamt about sort of 15, 20 years ago in internal comms, the idea of personalizing internal communication and, getting an assistant to do a lot of the kind of the heavy lifting. We've now got the capability to do a lot of that with AI. And I think it's not, doesn't have to be scary. It can be very liberating is the way we're looking at it. And when you add to that, the other thing that I'm really passionate about, which Tarek is too, which I'll talk about today, is the idea of finally giving our people a consumer grade experience at work. For years, it's been the case that we have, an ever improving experience as a customer, and customer experience departments, marketing departments, etc., are really set up to genuinely get to know us as consumers. And we kind of, I feel like we didn't really embrace that internally, and there was a real missed opportunity. And I think that with AI coming along, it frees us up, whether we're in internal comms or the people side of the business, it frees us up. It gives us some bandwidth back to be able to do more of the kind of the human side of work. So when Tarek and I first met, we had very, very similar kind of outlooks on that, and we had some very interesting, inspiring, exciting conversations. And I was blown away by the work that Tarek and his team are doing, and their kind of philosophy, and everything he's going to talk about today. So I was really, really keen to get Tarek on to share some of his wisdom and also really practical ideas and tools with you. Um, this is not something that you're just thinking about, Tarek. This what you're talking about today is something you're actually doing with clients today. So it was really, really exciting to hear about the work that you're doing. I also think you've got a really fascinating background as well, kind of a tech entrepreneur who's kind of fallen into this world, really. I'm sure you could tell us all about that. I think I'm always fascinated by how people end up in the roles that we do, right? Because I mean, maybe more so today, but certainly when I first started out, there wasn't really kind of an obvious kind of career path to do what I ended up doing. And there's so many people coming from different, different parts of the organization, from, whether it's from tech, or I've got one of my very good clients who I love working with came from project management background. Sometimes people come from a journalistic background or from an HR background. So it's always fascinating to hear how people kind of landed in this space and what they're passionate about. So delighted to welcome you, Tarek. I'm going to hand over to you to share your wisdom with us, and there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions. Before I do that, though, I'm just going to check in with Katie because I always forget to say something I'm supposed to remember to say. So, Katie, what have I forgotten to say today?
I don't think you've forgotten anything, Em. All I'll say is
Amazing.
just to encourage everybody to pop any questions into the chat, and we can come back to those at the end. Or if there's something really pressing, then I'll let Tarek know. So yeah,
Awesome. Thanks,
Feel
Katie.
free. Yeah, feel free. Questions are great. I love questions. I
Brilliant.
thrive on questions. Yes, I love questions. And there's actually I don't even, this is kind of tangentially connected. There's one of my favorite books is called A More Beautiful Question. And it's all about innovation. And why don't we innovate more? It's because people don't ask questions. And they have some study where the average 3-year-old asks 70,000 questions a year. By the time they're in high school, it's 30. We just beat questioning out of people. It's like, no, this is the way you learn. But society makes it feel like there's something taboo about asking questions. Like, how else will you innovate unless you challenge and ask, why do we do it this way? Or what if we tried that? Otherwise, it's just serendipitous. You drop the chocolate in the peanut butter, boom, you've got innovation. But that was accidental. All other innovation comes from asking questions. So, yes, ask questions. I love it so much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally with you on that. Absolutely. And I think people really underestimate it's something you can really work on, right? Asking great questions, and get better at, and the questions get better, what you get back improves. So totally with you, Tarek. Absolutely.
My,
So
my, go
over to
ahead.
you.
Sorry.
Over to you.
Well, thank you.
Floor
So
is yours.
I'll start with a couple of things. My background is a nerd. I started writing software when I was 12 because I found it fascinating, and it's just the way my brain works. Like, here's this blank canvas that is only limited by your creativity. You can make the computer do anything you want. It was like my calling in life. And so I built a number of companies all around problems I thought were interesting. And so my story with Cerkl, so that's the company spelled Cerkl. I know I'm not a marketer. I apologize. It's stupid. Don't judge me. Too late, I know. But the idea was a feedback loop, Cerkl. So as you like, communication 101 is you put something out into the universe, and then how are people responding? That is machine learning. That's how something gets better, and you fine tune the process, you fine tune the communication, you fine tune the language. And so as I was thinking about this, it was never designed to be a solution for internal communication. So I didn't even know internal communication existed. How this all began was I was on the school board in Cincinnati, Ohio for my kids because they were young, and I love education. So I'm volunteering to be on the school board, And I couldn't understand why I would run into a friend at the grocery store and I would say, Jim, why weren't you at this event last night at the high school around careers in finance? And I know he loves finance. And he would say to me, I didn't know about it. Like, how are you not seeing this? We're sending emails, Facebook, Twitter, notes in backpacks. How are you missing this? Because it's an opportunity for him to engage in a way that's meaningful to him. So it was driving me crazy. How do we get more people engaged with our kids' education? That's how this all started. So as I'm thinking through really studying this problem of engagement, I realized a couple of things that were kind of mind blowing to me. The first was we create more communication from the beginning of time to 2003. So we create more than that every 3 hours. And that was 10 years ago. It's probably every hour. That's how much we as a society are creating content. It is mind blowing. And so when I realized how much communication people are sifting through, I said, well, what are the brands that really are doing a good job of bucking that trend and engaging me? And it was Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Spotify. And I look at the commonalities of how they are engaging, which is really tied into the subject of this webinar, a consumer grade experience. So all of them, regardless of what service they're providing, make you feel as though you're the only viewer, watcher, subscriber, reader. It doesn't matter. They tailor everything to you. They are filtering through the noise on your behalf. How do they do that? Well, number one is they can ask you, Emma, what kinds of movies and shows do you like? And that starts the recommendation process. But after that, or even if you don't do that, it's learning based on your behavior. So I could tell Netflix I'm signing up and I want it to think I'm super sophisticated and I want to watch Italian black and white subtitled, films from the 50s. And then it sees that I'm actually watching Chris Farley and Adam Sandler and Tommy Boy. It knows me. So immediately it stops with the highbrow recommendations and goes into the sophomore humor because that's what I really like. So it's a combination of what people say, but more importantly, what are they doing? That's the learning process. Once it has that and it understands you, then it starts tailoring every interaction around what it knows about you to save you time. And here's another mind-blowing statistic. Most people are familiar with Netflix. 85% of what is consumed on Netflix is what it recommends for you. Based on, you've watched this, we recommend this. Or here are just the top 10 kind of movies in wherever your location. And that is what people are consuming. And fundamentally, the key takeaway that I learned through this entire process is that the most valuable currency, and I don't think this will ever change, is not the yen, the dollar, the sterling, the euro. It is none of those things. It is your time. It is people's time. They are willing to pay for things that save them time. And that's why these consumer grade experiences have bucked the trend, because they know you, they save you time. That's why people love Uber or Airbnb or Netflix. Just think of how much time it saves you. So how can we then apply some of these principles inside internal communication? So how can we take some of these things and apply them? So that's how this all began. Is I was trying to solve engagement for my kids' school. So I built Cerkl kind of nights and weekends. This was never meant to be a business. It was, I really just want a better way to communicate to the parents, alumni, community members. So when there is something that catches your attention based on your interests, it's front and center for you. You don't have to dig through it. Why isn't it all tailored? That was my question that I was trying to solve. And so that went really well. And all of a sudden, marketers started coming to me and saying, could we use this technology for this audience or that audience? Sure. And then a large healthcare system came to me 10,000 employees, and they said, we're getting all this personalized communication. Could we do this internally for our employees? And if you think about the complexity of healthcare, 24/7, multiple location, departments within each location, and a very diverse workforce. You've got facilities, you've got neurosurgeons. How in the world can you craft messaging that resonates with that complicated of an audience? Deskless, you name it, they have it all. So I said, I don't know anything about internal communication. The last time I worked for a big company, it was Outlook and SharePoint. And I don't know what I was expecting them to say, like some cool technology that they were using. I said, what are you guys using? And they said, Outlook and SharePoint, which was like, what? How have the advancements we've seen with consumer interactions not translated to the most important asset of any company, which is your own people? Most companies, I think the average companies, 70% of their operating expense is for people. And how are we not giving them the best experience inside the organization? It was mind blowing to me. So I said, this is shocking, but yes, let's try it. And they were super innovative. They said, let's try it. So they had great success. And we then went to a conference where they presented how they had changed how they communicated to their employees. And this was in New Orleans, and I'll never forget it because here's this little healthcare system in Cincinnati on stage talking to brands like Nike, Citibank, Delta Airlines, Lenovo, L'Oreal, like global massive brands. And they would not let her get off the stage. It was mind blowing because I thought, oh, well, here's the little healthcare system in Cincinnati. Maybe they're not the most advanced. But of course, all these other big companies have to be operating this way. None of them are. Nobody is. And whenever we talk to someone that's doing internal communication at any company, the first thing that we tell them is you are not alone. You cannot see what other people are doing. So you probably think, I know we're not the best. We probably are making a lot of mistakes, but you're not. Nobody does this well because you're not empowered to do it well. You are not given the tools and technology to do what you need to do to be really successful. So let me pause there. That was kind of a overwhelming opening. Let me pause and see, Emma, did I miss anything? Katie, did I miss anything? See if there's any questions so far. If not, I'll kind of dive into how we think about solving this problem from a technologist lens.
I think that's a really great, it wasn't overwhelming at all. It's a really clear intro for me. And I suppose I'm interested, and we don't have to answer this now, but I guess from people on the call, why do we think that internal comms, people side of the business, is so far behind? Why haven't these technologies been embraced? I think it's really interesting. It's a really good challenge when they exist and they're out in the world. And yet, like you say, people are still using SharePoint and Outlook. Or they're going, oh no, we don't. It always makes me laugh. I'm going to show my age now here, like Gen X, proud being Gen X. People go, oh no, we don't use email. We use WhatsApp. And I'm like, it's still a messaging, it's still a way of messaging each other. Yes, it's a bit more funky, but it's not like it's any more innovative. In fact, it just
Yes.
pings at me all the time. So, and I might be missing something there, but it's fascinating to me that we are still so, far behind. But the enterprise social networks come in, didn't we? I don't know, maybe sort of 10, 15 years ago, you Jive, you Chatter, your Facebook for, what was it called? Workplace Facebook, they've got rid of now.
Yes.
And that didn't really move the dial either, did it? So yeah, it's interesting points. I think a few people are coming. Okay, Kate's talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a comment here in the chat from Kate saying, is it because we're not seen as money makers, even though we know that the role as internal communicators has a huge effect on the bottom line, and anyone working in that people space, employee experience, employee engagement, we know it makes a difference. But if you're not seen as money makers, and you're seen as sort of fluffy, comms seen as fluffy, or broadcast rather than strategic enablers. So therefore, they're not making the investment. They don't see it as being important enough. So that's a reflection from Kate. But anyone else, do feel free to pop your thoughts into the chat as well, or maybe you're in an organization that are doing this differently. So do pop as many comments, questions into the chat as you can.
And just before I hand back over to you, Tarek, if that's the case, let us know. Because as I said, Lee and I just on the last week of the People First Internal Comms book we've written, and oh my goodness, finding case studies has been like looking for a needle in a haystack. There are some companies out there that are doing genuinely human-centered, consumer-grade approach, people first, yeah. And obviously, Tarek's hopefully going to feature in the book. And there are some out there, but there's not many. And I'm like, and we've got a good network, and I put the feelers out there, and people are sort of saying we want to, but we're just not there yet. So if you are doing something in this space, then let us know. Over to you, Tarek. I shall hand back over to you.
Well, so let me start with, I agree with Kate's comment in the chat 100%. So I think the people function, HR, internal comms, is seen as kind of a necessity, but they don't see it as a competitive advantage. And I think about, would IT ever tell sales and marketing what tools they can use? Never. Absolutely never. That has never happened. Why? Because they are tied to revenue and they can prove their value to the P&L. Whereas the people function, that is still difficult for us to do. And so IT says, listen, we get O365, just use SharePoint, use Outlook, whatever. And you have to make this business case as to why. And there's a number of ways that this probably is an entire separate webinar, kind of showing your value, showing the ROI of what you do, tying your work to business results. When you start doing that, then you can start making a case for X, Y, and Z. But that's what happened to marketing. And again, I'll show my age. I went back and I looked and I said, how many chief marketing officers were there in 1995? And the answer was 1% of companies had a CMO in 1995. 1%, which seems insane to think about it because marketing is so important. But the reason is, think about what marketing was in 1995. Billboards, radio, TV, print. We can't measure anything. I don't know if it's helping sales or not. It's a complete guessing game. It's arts and crafts. And so when the internet came along, all of a sudden they could start proving their value. This campaign, we can measure and we can prove increased sales by whatever, 26%. Our ROI on that campaign was 249%. When you start seeing and talking like that, when you start seeing numbers and talking that way, you can get anything you want, because anything that's going to increase revenue is good, or anything that will decrease costs to a company is good. But today we have a hard time connecting the value of the communication that you're doing to either increasing revenue or decreasing costs. But I think that is right around the corner. Also a separate webinar. We should just do a series of these. But the point of today is, what does a consumer grade experience look like, feel like? And I'll give you our take. So this, obviously, we're a technology company. This is kind of what I've been thinking about, how we deploy this with customers. But I think there's a lot of takeaways. Certainly, I'm not in sales. Check us out if you would like, or don't. Doesn't matter to me. But there's a lot of learning here. So I'm going to share some slides. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, that's all working. Lovely.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a platform. It's out there. It's called Broadcast, and it does a bunch of things, but it's built for internal comms from the ground up. So one of the things that it does is audience management. I don't need to go to HR or IT to request a distribution list or send me the spreadsheet. You do it all yourself. I want to send a survey to people that started in this location the last 90 days to see how their onboarding experience was. You don't need to go to anyone. You can just do it within the platform and say, build that audience for me, send your survey, and get analytics. That's kind of basic blocking and tackling. All of these concepts build on each other. The next thing it does is standard email. But with analytics, it's drag and drop, adheres to your branding. Also, just standard. Most companies still, their number one source of communication and their preferred channel is email. So we know we have to support that. But this is where we are dramatically different. And this is where we get into this concept of a consumer grade experience. So I'll walk you through how all of this fits together and why, as a communicator, this would be just a game changer, a massive saver of time, and a massive driver of engagement. So when we think about what actually is a consumer grade experience, so I think we start with a definition. So if I think about Natalie, so she works at this company, she works in customer success. These are the things that are not optional for her to know about. And I think it's an important point to call out. So whenever I say Netflix does a great job of engaging, and people are like, but that's marketing. We are a company, and people cannot just opt into what they want to know, not know, prescriptive versus subscriptive communication. Well, if Natalie misses an important announcement, could she lose her benefits, or some important deadline goes by because she didn't see it? Netflix doesn't care. They recommend a movie. I don't watch it. So what? This is totally different. This is why I will fight with anyone that tries to argue with me that marketing is more complicated than internal communication. Like, you are high as a kite. There's no chance that is correct. Literally zero. Because of this caveat of they have to know this information. The problem with this need to know piece, this is where it becomes kind of a catch-22. I need you to see the message from the CEO. This is not optional. Okay. So what most communicators do is they take that message and they put it everywhere. On the internet, Teams, in a newsletter, mobile, you name it. The intranet, of course. But what if I've already seen that? What happens? What's the relationship we're establishing with our employee where I saw this on the intranet? Why are you sending me an email with the exact same thing? That is the problem we really have to overcome. How do you make sure they get what they need to know? That's the number one concern, without spamming them. So let's talk about how we can deliver that experience. So here are the things that she needs to know about. And this is where it becomes consumer grade. What does she care about as a human? So if I think about the two things that would be defined as success for an internal communicator, if I asked 100 internal communicators, what does success look like to you? I would say the vast majority would say, boy, success would be if our employees were both informed and engaged with what's going on at this organization. We are doing a great job, if I could say that was true. Okay, so the informing is need to know. The engaging is, what does Emma care about as a human? How do we make sure she sees what we are doing as an organization that really resonates with her, that is outside of the need to know bucket of communication? This is where it becomes really complex. So we think about consumer grade. Of course, it is personalized to, in this case, Natalie. I go back to this need to know is front and center for her. This is not a marketing exercise. You work for a company. You need to know these things. Removing the noise is, I already know that she saw the message from the CEO on the internet, so she's not going to get an email about it. It's not going to be her lead story in her newsletter because she's already seen it. Let's respect her, understand her. And then the last piece is, it is constantly learning. in the same way Netflix and Amazon and Hulu learn about you based on your behavior. So she could tell us that she cares about health and wellness, or we could learn about her interests based on what she's actually engaging in. So it is this unbelievable marriage of prescriptive communication, what we need you to know, and subscriptive. They can subscribe to things they care about, basically through their behavior or what they tell us. That is what a consumer grade experience looks like. And that is across every single channel. Now I'm going to walk you through how we think about that. So friendly just meaning this is not a separate portal that they need to go to. It's just part of how they already work. They're used to an intranet. They're used to email. They're used to newsletters. They're used to mobile. They're used to these channels, Teams or Slack. Great. Don't change any of them. Keep them all there. Let's just make them intelligent, have them learn, and have them talk to each other. Talk about that in a minute. Also searchable, filterable, because I'm sure you've all heard, I remember something about tuition reimbursement 9 months ago. Where would I find that now? They know they've seen it, but they can't find it. So how do we make it easy for them to find what they're looking for and then reach them where they are? Is just, you don't have to push people to a channel. Netflix does not care if I consume it on my phone, my laptop, or my TV. They don't care. They care about delivering a relevant experience. So this is kind of the framework and the definition from a technology perspective of how we define consumer grade. And you could replace any of our customers and just drop in Netflix, and they would say, Netflix agrees with this definition. Amazon agrees with this definition. This is more complicated than what Netflix is doing to you today as a consumer because of this need to know piece. So I'm going to give you some examples in a minute, but let me pause here because this fundamental definition will guide everything else that we're going to talk about. Emma, does this elicit any questions from you?
Well, it just really resonates with me. What I loved about when you sort of talked me through the work you do is this. I say on the last slide, it said finally, the ability to be able to personalize finally. And I think it's been like a long held dream of anyone that's worked in internal comms, right? We know we need to do it, but it's always been really, really difficult to do it. And I was share this story about when I first started working in internal comms in 1998, and I kind of got lucky because one of my first projects was to oversee the first ever intranet. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, by the way. But actually, I kind of had a bit because I'd been in a band in the 90s, and I've been part of, well, we built a website, so I kind of websites. I had a little bit of, I've done that, but that wasn't what got me the job, by the way. But anyway, I digress. So I got to work with a really great tech team who introduced me to user experience and user experience design. And we developed some employee personas for the intranet. And I thought, wow, this is brilliant. So I was exposed to that thinking early on, just completely accidentally. As a psychologist, it made sense to me, right? So I got into the idea of using personas very early on in my comms career, and my thinking has evolved over the years. I think my early kind of personas were very kind of what I call pen portraits, like like Natalie, is this age. She likes watching these sorts of films. She can, reads this sorts of newspapers, etc. As I've gone over the years, they've become much more behavior based. But even back then, for something specific like the intranet, they had a very specific function and purpose, and they kind of worked. But when we kind of tried to use them as part of the team, just for our general communication, we had like 6 personas. They're a great idea. We spent a lot of time putting them together, but the reality of even personalizing the communication or segmenting just on those 6 personas, we just couldn't do it. We didn't have the operating system to do that, the bandwidth to do that. And that's what, like 20 plus years ago. So for me, it's like this long held dream of anyone working in internal comms who can finally personalize in a really sophisticated way. So I find that really exciting. And I'd love to hear what other people think about that,
When it's a great tie into this next slide, because when we talk about what's actually going on behind the scenes to facilitate this from a technology perspective. Internal communicators, when they first see this, it is such a different paradigm of communication. So we'll walk them through an example, which I'll do that in a minute. It is so different than how they have been communicating, and it takes them a second to kind of catch their breath. Like, am I understanding this correctly? And then immediately they start asking questions, which I think is always great. Then they get excited. Like, they really understand how it fits together, how they can get more reach on their content that they're creating, how it can free them up, save them time doing mundane work that they don't like doing anyway, so they can focus more time on creating great content. So I'm going to walk you through just a high level example, kind of the before and after. Old way, new way. So old way would be, we have an HR policy update that we need to communicate. And let's say this is for a certain cohort, directors and above at your organization. They need to know this. So number one, nothing having to do with consumer grade, but just having to think about empowering the communicator is, if that audience doesn't exist, you can create it yourself. Don't have to submit a ticket. Don't have to go to HR and ask for a spreadsheet. Give me the latest directors, whatever, and then gets delayed because something else is on your plate. And you have to go back and say, can you update this spreadsheet? We're going to send it, whatever. That is all gone. So this is nothing to do with consumer grade. This is just empower the communicator. So you're in total control of the audience. You set the criteria. It's automatically kept in sync. Great. Okay, so old way, I may or may not have to go request a spreadsheet or submit a ticket for a DL to be created. I build an email, probably an Outlook. I may or may not have analytics. So once I hit send, I don't know necessarily who's opened, who's clicked, have they taken the action I need them to take. It's hard for me to, or if not impossible for me to retarget the people that did not engage with this communication. I may or may not put something on the intranet, but that's how we think about traditional communication. And a lot of it is based in email. So it's kind of a snapshot in time. Whoever's on the DL distribution list, they're getting it. Whether they open it or not, sometimes I am blind to what happens after I hit send. So immediately we're operating out of a deficit. And when we say this, I am telling you the biggest companies in the world still operate this way. I don't want people on this call to feel like, oh, we're so far behind the times. I am telling you, the brands that you would say are the most innovative you have ever heard of as a consumer still operate this way internally. I don't want anyone to feel bad because this is what you're doing. Okay, let me give you a different take on this exact same goal. So our goal is, we want to make sure directors and above are aware of this new HR policy around travel reimbursement. So I go back to, great, you create your audience, that takes seconds. And now instead of building an email, you can publish. So instead of send, you hit publish. This is a huge and important distinction. Once you create your content, so think of it like creating a piece of content in an intranet or posting to a CMS. So I give it the subject line and who it's going to go to. I can indicate for this story, it's valid for the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, evergreen. You decide. So I have it, who it's targeted for, how long it lasts. Then you hit publish. When you want it to start, of course. Then you hit publish, and then you are done. That's it. You don't do anything else. People are like, but what happens after I hit publish? Great question. What happens after you hit publish? That piece of content is then added to a repository, a content repository. It sits in a database. Now, when any employee that meets the criteria, so we said directors and above, goes to any channel, it first checks and says, oh, Katie, you're a director. Have you seen this piece of content? Because you're supposed to. And let's say the first place she goes is the intranet. If the answer is she hasn't seen it yet, great. That's need to know. It's above the fold. This is a top story for you because you have not seen this. Awesome. But no one is saying for the intranet, this is what it's the lead story, the carousel. It's all dynamic. When I go to Netflix's website, that experience is built for me in real time based on what it's learned. So when Katie goes to the intranet, it says, Katie's here. What does she need to know that she hasn't already seen? Great. Then it says, what does she want to know based on her behavior that she hasn't already seen somewhere else? And it builds a real-time personalized experience for Katie on the intranet. Now, let's say she doesn't go to the intranet. She goes to Teams. Guess what? That's her lead story because she still has not seen this travel reimbursement policy story that she's supposed to see. Let's say she doesn't see it in any of these channels, and we're going to put her newsletter together, which I'm going to show you how this works in a minute. This is built by AI following the exact same rules. What was Katie supposed to see this week that she hasn't already seen? Awesome. She hasn't seen this yet. This will be her lead story for her. If you've got 10,000 employees, there are 10,000 newsletters built for the employee based on what they need to know, want to know. So all of a sudden, the communicator is saying, wait a minute. So I'm not spamming my people. I just hit publish. If Katie's seen it in the channel of her choice, I get reach. Awesome. And I don't have to put it in every channel. I don't have to do the copy paste. I don't have to feed the beast. No, you don't. You don't have to do any of that anymore. Then it gets even better. So Katie is a director. Congratulations, Katie. Emma next week gets promoted to be a director. This content automatically flows to Emma because it hasn't expired and she meets the criteria. So think about the additional reach you get with your content and the scalability you get because you're not having to go back to HR and say, can you give me who are the new directors in the last 30 days? Because they're supposed to know this. You don't have to do any of that ever again. You just hit publish and then you let AI find the person, build the experience based on these criteria. So it is a very different way to think about it. If someone was hired in 3 weeks from now as a director, that content is automatically routed to them because it hasn't expired. You're a director. You're supposed to see this. All right, let me pause here. This is such a different way to think about communication. Fundamentally, it is the difference between send and publish. But let me pause and see if I have any Emma reactions, Katie reactions, or if we have any questions.
I think a question has come through, but again, it just really resonated with me. I mean, when I spent 10 years in house, looking after internal comms engagement and experience, and distribution lists were the bane of my life. I remember just, it's part of the reason I kind of fell out of love a little bit with internal comms because, in the early days, it was more about communicating and kind of as the digital tools kind of came in, we spent a lot of time in darkened rooms arguing distribution lists. And I kind of felt like we'd lost our way a bit. I thought, this isn't why I kind of got into this game. This is not what I'm here to do. I'm all about, I'm a psychologist about helping behavioral change, facilitate behavior change and culture, etc. And I spend so much of my life, or my team spent so much of life, sorting through distribution lists. And it kind of took over a little bit. I don't know if I see you laughing as well, Katie, because you obviously spent some time in internal comms as well, didn't you? And it's just
exactly the same. And when we would sort of get involved in things like surveys, and it was really important that everyone was covered. It was just like, how is this stuff not there? Why is it not available? How is it so far out? And because these people are getting paid, right? You know that there's a database somewhere that's got everybody on it, and it used to just blow my mind, and it was so frustrating. So yeah, 100% with you there,
But I think we've got a question, haven't we, Katie? Can you
Yeah, there's a couple of comments and questions that have come through the chat. The first one's a question. How well does the app integrate with IT security to allow full usage of features without compromising internal security measures? That's the first one.
We get that a lot. So it's just part of our process. So we think about GDPR, we think about California Consumer Protection Act. So there's a lot of privacy that this has to adhere to. And then there's security, because you're dealing with, normally it's not, rocket plans or how somebody's building a plane. It's benefits, it's enrollment, it's wellness, it's all those things, but it doesn't matter. It is sensitive to that organization. So everything we do is encrypted. It's bank level security. We work with banks. We work with government entities. We work with technology companies. So it's just a rite of passage. It has to be enterprise grade security, kind of like you would expect with a Workday or Microsoft.
Brilliant.
Great question.
The next one here from Kate. Love the potential of this. How does it work together? Oh, sorry. How does it work to gather the people information? Is it using something like Active Directory? I'm guessing it's only as accurate as the info from that.
Exactly. So yes, it sits on top of your people data systems. So it could be a number of people data systems. Most times we don't work with customers where everything is clean in one source. That's so rare. That would be the exception, not the rule. Most companies have data everywhere. So they might have not for you, full-time employees in Workday. And they might have contractors in a totally different system. Fine. They might have 80% of the information they need in these two systems. And then we need the other 20% is in Active Directory. So what we're doing is, because we sit on top of your people data systems, the view for the communicator is you have access to all of it. You don't have to worry about where it's originating. We have one customer that has 26 different people data systems. So can you imagine, as a communicator, trying to build that audience? That's what they were dealing with. And so because you can have as many as you want, and they've grown through acquisition. That's why they're structured in that way. They're moving to UKG. But yeah, for the communicator, you're saying, I need to get this message out to everyone in London. That might go across 13 different people data systems, but who cares? That doesn't matter. The communicator's responsibility is, I need to get this message to this cohort of people. And so that's how we think about people data, is you have to be enabled to do your job. That's number one. This is basic blocking and tackling. You can't get to a consumer grade experience if you can't segment, if you can't target, if you're constantly waiting on spreadsheets or IT to turn around distribution lists. It's like you're trying to run with a parachute on your back. We have any other questions, or I can dive in and show some examples?
Yeah, dive in, Tarek, dive in.
Okay. So probably 85% of our customers use SharePoint. So within SharePoint, great. This is no coding required, immediate personalization. If Emma gets there and her name was Sam, then we would say, hey, you have 4 things that you need to see. So they've been targeted to you by the company that you have not seen anywhere else. So she gets an alert when she gets to her intranet. This is out of the box, no coding. So this is how we push back on IT, that's saying, hey, use the tools we've already given you. It's like, great. I'm going to use SharePoint. I just want it to be amazing. And I want it to be tailored and personalized and connected to our other channels. So that way you're not getting into a fight about, oh, we need a new intranet. You don't have to have that argument with IT, because that's a hard one to win. Like, no, we'll use SharePoint. We're just going to have it all tied together, and then we'll show the ROI. So SharePoint, if you wanted to go further, so we have customers that have built out the entire intranet experience is tailored to who is visiting. So when Emma gets here, it would say, Emma's here. This whole page is constructed based on what she needs to know and hasn't already seen, what she wants to know and hasn't already seen. You've got 50,000 employees, 50,000 versions of what's going on at your organization based on those criteria. But it's no additional work for the communicator. They're just creating great content. And then we're using that to populate this experience, which is exactly what Netflix is doing. So you can have this personalized news feed anywhere. So it's not just intranet. So think about, what if I wanted to do a personalized news feed, and think about it like Google News or Apple News, exactly that, with the caveat of you have control over what they have to see, but you can put this anywhere. So you could put it in an LMS, you could put it in sales enablement websites, you could put it anywhere you want, because wherever that person goes, it should be tailored to them. So it's not limited to even your intranet. Teams is the same way. So now once you start adding, if you're a Microsoft shop and you've already invested in Teams and SharePoint, that's just a stack that you're using, why aren't they talking to each other? So adds right into Teams. I can go in and now I can get personalized news within Teams that's also understanding what I've consumed in other channels. But you as a communicator are not publishing anything directly to Teams. You just hit publish, and when Emma gets here, it builds this experience for her in real time within Teams. And then this is my favorite, and this is the most commonly used of all of our customers. What they use by, well, email, kind of building email and just sending it, is number one. This is number two. So what you're looking at here is what we call a news digest. Because all of your content you just hit publish and is sitting in a repository, we can now build personalized, we call them news digest, but they're basically a newsletter for every single employee based on what they need to know, want to know. So Tara's view of what's going on at Athos will be different than Linda's, because they're in different roles, different locations, different reporting structures. They just need to know different things. They've also seen different things on other channels. And this is a little bit tough to see, but at the bottom of the slide, you see this section called recommended for you. And here, it's kind of covered up. This is saying this is a 92% match with your interests. This is outside of what you need to know by the organization, but based on your past behavior, you are going to find this a 92% match. This is going to be interesting to you, which is exactly the same model Netflix does. If you log into Netflix, it's saying this is an 80% match based on your behavior. But this is all built by AI. So you, as a communicator, are now able to create great content, you get more reach, you're getting personalization without, it was hard to manage 6 personas back in the day for Emma. How in the world could you personalize for 1,000 employees, 5,000, 10,000? It's impossible. That is the beauty of this technology, where it is really designed to change the paradigm of the employer-employee relationship. Let me give you a couple more examples. Microsites. So I go back to one of the most commonly asked questions is, I know I've seen that. Why isn't there a site that just has an archive of everything that has been sent or made available to that employee where they can go search? Show me everything that's been discussed across all channels around employee benefits. They can just click on it and it just filters out, and here's all the employee benefits, whether it came through the intranet, Teams, and newsletter, you name it. They don't care. They just want the answer to the question. So that is a big solve. And then we get this question a lot around, do you actually ask employees what they care about? Yes, you as a company can decide whether you want to turn this on or not. But imagine the flow of I start at this company. Workday or whoever tells us Tarek has started here and he reports to Emma. He's in this department. Here's his email address, whatever. And so you can turn this functionality on where then I get an automatic email day one that says, welcome to Acme Co. We really care about you and we want to know what you care about. This happens with our customers today. So then I would get this. I don't have to do this. I don't have to tell it what I care about. It's going to learn regardless. But what message are we sending to a brand new employee where they get an email from us saying, we want to know what you care about? And they can opt into certain things. I care about innovation. I care about community service. I care about health and wellness. You decide what the categories are for your organization. Then I can go in and select. That matters to me. So it's an immediate, like really different kind of trust establishing move to have that automatically sent to your new employees. And when we roll this out, all your existing employees would get this the first time as well. But let me pause here. That was a lot of information. We've covered a lot. And this is not the future. This is happening today. But most people have never seen this. When I talked about this with Emma for the first time, she's like, I didn't know this existed. Let me pause.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it blew me away. And I think, we talk a lot about people first, being human centered. And for me, what this solution does, it gives me back the time to do the real work, the work that I should have been doing all these years. I've kind of sucked into the bureaucratic operational side of comms, which is distribution lists and all that stuff, right? And it frees me up to do the real work of communication, which is being genuinely people first, human centered, being that person or that team in the organization that knows our people better than anyone else, getting curious about them and just being passionate about understanding them to a really kind of, great degree. So we really, the bits that AI can't do, the human bit. So, the creativity, the curiosity, understand the nuances of culture, knowing that, this director over there is going through a difficult time at the moment, that they might be at risk of redundancy, so they might not be doing such a great job with their team, and that person over there, they might not be very high up on the hierarchy, but they've got so much power and influence. I need to work with them to help be an ambassador for this kind of rollout strategy, whatever it might be. The stuff that I know that AI can never know, it frees me up to do that part, which really elevates my practice. And I think I'm really passionate about ROI, Tarek, and I totally think it's possible, and I've done it many times to prove ROI through communication. And I think that I've got lots of hypotheses as to why the profession kind of struggles with it, which I won't go into today. Save for another webinar. I talk a lot about in the new book, but I think it's totally doable, and I know you do as well. And I think we just need to unlock that for more people and give them the tools to be able to demonstrate the ROI. And I think having tools like this free us up to do the work we should have been doing the whole way through. So yeah, it's very exciting.
And I want to be respectful of time. I think we're scheduled for an hour, and
Yeah.
I can be, as I've been described, loquacious, which I guess is chatty. So I just want to pause and see if there's any other questions, any thoughts, because we're running up against it, and we're going to send a follow-up that will include links to the slides and some other things. And we're talking about doing like kind of a deep dive. So if communicators actually want to see this in action, I think we're going to schedule one in July where we're talking about doing, so just sit in, whatever, just ask real questions. How would we actually accomplish X, Y, and Z? The slides are great, but show me. So that's coming too.
That sounds great. I know there's a lot of people would be really keen to sit in on and see that, Tarek. So no, it sounds great. We'll definitely let all of our members know when that's happening. So yeah, that's great. Did you want any sort of final thoughts?
Yeah, well, we are out of time, Tarek. So just want to say a massive thank you for coming on today and sharing this. I think, like I say, it blew me away. And I think I dreamt about this kind of solution back in the day, and now it's finally here. And I think it will just be such a huge help to so many people working in internal comms. And I can see huge potential. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing this, sharing your ideas and your thinking of philosophy and the practical tools as well. I think it's so much potential. So yeah, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and
Of course.
love to carry on the conversation at some point. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. And really enjoyed the questions. Thanks for all the comments and questions. Happy to dive in deeper. I think the more we can expose like what's out there and what's available, we use this or don't use this. I know my salespeople would kill me, but it doesn't really matter. The whole point is there is a different way to think about this. You're not stuck in the same way we've always done it. So just making people aware, if people walk away and say, I had no idea we could even do that, then I feel like this was successful.
Amazing. Thanks, Tarek. And thank you to everyone for dialing in today. Really appreciate it. Yes, we will be sharing the slides and resources as well, and the recording as well. You'll be hearing from us. So thank you so much. And hopefully see you on our next webinar, Katie, which is the 25th of
25th. Yep, 25th. That's another really exciting webinar. All about, let me give you the exact title of it so I don't fluff this.
We're launching our white paper, which is kind of looking at this whole idea. It's broadening it out, not just internal commerce, but the whole of the employee experience, like how we kind of look at this idea of, you know, needing a consumer grade experience alongside the backdrop of AI and the burning platform that's given us. But the opportunity it's given us is amazing. So we're going to be launching our white paper on that and showing all the latest thinking and the tools on the EX space to help you to make that change, that transition. So very excited.
Exactly that. There you go. Couldn't have put it better myself. I put the link to that in the chat as well for anyone that wants to sign up to that webinar. That's called AI, Human-Centered Design and the Future of Work. So fab.
Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again, Tarek. And we'll hopefully see you on the next webinar in June. It's June already.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Thank you all. Bye.